Hola, hello, I am Pepe the King Prono Guy.
Oh, that's so f***ing cool. And that's how we completely destroy a power board on a Leader 120. Nice.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the channel. This is the first in our three-part series on the Battle of the Whoops, and that's a battle between Tiny Whoop and NewBeeDrone. Now the first one we're going to start with is the Tiny Whoop Freestyler, and as you can see that cost me $117.34 after shipping. The whoop in my hand there is the NewBeeDrone AcroBee, and that's the other video we're going to have. Now it comes with a cockroach frame. And not only one cockroach frame, we get two cockroach frames in this kit, so you have a spare frame to work with in case anything should go wrong. It also comes with the FX900 TW dipole FPV combo, so that's the camera and the board we're looking at. Let's take a peek inside here. Inside this box you'll find the camera, the VTX board already connected to each other, a pigtail, and there is one camera mount in there. Just a reminder, make sure you comment on the giveaway video and not this one, because comments on this one don't count towards the contest. On to our next item in the box. It's our little bag of goodies, everything else in there in a nice little bag of goodies. You can see we get the Eachine 31mm props. We're only getting one set of props in this box, so you're going to need more if you get this one. We also have our canopy and three different mounting sizes for your VTX, and I believe it is 10, 20, and 30 degrees. Now they're not marked, so you do have to kind of hold them side by side to see what it is. And we get the canopy in white so that you can paint it up however you like or just leave it white. Now we got a card for the Awesome Sauce motors, and that's mostly because that card had fallen out of the bag. The motors were actually, the motors fell out of the bag that they were supposed to be in with said card. Now we get the Beta FPV F3 board. Now this board is OSD compatible, but I did find out that if we do want OSD, we're going to have to do some soldering to make that happen. It is not out of the box set to do that. So inside there you get the board and a pigtail already mounted, a spare pigtail, and all the nuts and bolts and screws that you're going to need. So we also get a 205 mAh HV battery, Tiny Whoop branded. And we get a 250 HV Tiny Whoop branded battery as well to go in this package. So we do get two batteries in here to try out. Next up we have our gold motors, and those are the Awesome Sauce motors. These are some of their better motors. I mean, they do make even, more powerful motors than this, but these are the motors that they claim will work for acro. Then we have another little bag that's kind of Armaton-esque. Has a little card in there, just says, enjoy what you got in the bag. We get some stickers in here. Now I'll just tell you about these stickers. Unfortunately, they're not the long stickers, so there's really not any place on the Whoop for us to put those stickers. And we get, like I said, a candy, very Armaton-esque, and a spare pigtail in there. So that's our box. Now, when we go, we're going to need an X-Acto knife, a pair of dikes, some tweezers, and your soldering iron, and a Phillips head screwdriver. Those are the things you're going to need to put this guy together. I'm going to start with the VTX. You can pretty much start anywhere you like as far as assembling it. I just want to get the VTX mounted into the holder and get that part out of the way. I'm going to go with the 10-degree mounts, just preferably with whoops, what I'm comfortable with. again, if you want to choose, you're going to have to kind of hold them side by side to look at all three, and that'll tell you what has the most angles. You can see there's an extreme angle there to a flat angle, so we're just going to select out our 10 and go from there. Now, one thing, because there are no instructions at all in this, I didn't even really have much luck finding anything online about it. I did find a few videos to figure out finally that I'm used to those VTXs kind of standing upright, and obviously that one wasn't going to. So what I found was the camera with the wording reading correctly at the top is the way it goes in. And it did take a little while. The printouts of these mounts really weren't, to me, like the highest quality, and y'all know from my videos I do a lot of printing, and this was like on the really low end fast print mode. And when you do that, you usually lose accuracy, and it's kind of, for lack of better words, just a shitty print. And I really struggled getting this to even snap in properly, because the camera in the front just pushes down and it will finally snap in. And then I've come to the conclusion, okay, the VTX is going to lay flat and it snaps into the back. And I went ahead and started doing that and putting that in, and it just was a bit of a struggle to get it to snap in right. It still seemed to want to stand up, or not snap in at all, and one side still be standing up. And I put a lot of pressure on there that I really didn't want to, so as you can see, you'll just watch me fumble around with this. I tried to put in speed motion anything that was going to be boring for you guys, but yeah, you just gotta finagle it, work with what it is. I could have always took out my X-Acto knife and trimmed some stuff off. I did have 2 of these 10-degree mounts, so it's not like, I was going to be hosed for breaking one of them. So just take some finagling, and we finally get it in as level it's going to be, and we're ready to put that into the pile for things to put on later. So this part, I do start to wonder to myself why I have only a 2-wire pigtail coming off of the VTX/camera, thinking, how is that going to plug into the board? But I just throw it to the side here, thinking we'll check that out in a minute, and we're going to move on to the board. Now, I just want to check out the board, put it on the frame, make sure the buttons are where we can get to them, as far as, the bind button and the USB are in a place that once we put it together we can get to them. So it does have an arrow on the board pointing to the front, and the pigtail is in the back on the Beta FPV board. And it is an F3 board. It is OSD compatible. However, down the line here I'll show you something about that. So again, just checking that out, making sure everything's in place. We'll put it on the pegs without the cushions for now, and just make sure it's going to go on easy. Sometimes some of these things, are going to take some muscle to get them in place, so I just want to see in advance what I'm getting myself into. Take a look at it, we'll put the motors in, and then we'll get the board in. Now the motors come in 2 sets with a blue and red wire, and then a set with a black and white wire. Now on this particular one, we need to cut off the little tab that it is at the bottom of the stands for the motors on the frame, because these motors are longer than the frame was designed for. So we just take our X-Acto knife and pop those off on all 4. Now the red and blue wire are on your, if you're looking at the quad, on your right front and left back, and the black and white are on the left front and right back. And even if you had your frame backwards, you couldn't screw it up if you put the motors down on the table like I did, in that order. So we just slip it through, making sure that the plug is on the back side closest to where the board's going to be. And then it does take some pressure to put these guys down. because it's a tight holder, which is great because we don't want our motors popping out like they did on that QX that we reviewed. So you just take a little, you gotta maneuver it the best you can to figure out what's the best way for you to slide it in. I tried several different ways and finally got in a rhythm. But one thing you want to do is make sure those wires at the bottom are separated and not in the middle, because when we trimmed off our little tab, we don't want to push that motor down and put those wires on that tab, because these wires are microscopically thin and they will cut easily. So we're going to fast forward through putting the other 3 motors in. Once again, making sure that we're catty corner on our colors, so red and blue on corners, black and white on corners. Slide them in, making sure our wires are free of getting pinched off on there. Now, I won't lie to you, if you forget to cut the nubbins off, you'll know, because the motors are going to sit outside the stands pretty far, and that's what I did. And after I put the first one in, realized, oh, that's right, take the nubbins off. And if you tried to put a prop on there, it'd be sitting way outside of the ducts, so you would know it. So there we go, all 4 motors in, everything's set. So we'll move on to putting our board on. Now, this board's using one of those metal antennas there, so it's nice and stiff and strong. And again, we'll just make sure everything's set, and we're gonna get our bag of goodies out. Oh, that's right. Sorry, I record sound after because my house is constantly something going on. I get about 4 hours today to actually record voiceover on these videos, because otherwise my house is constantly going on, and you would have TV or my wife or my kid or something you'd hear in the background. So I do apologize if I stop following myself very well when I go back to record them. But what I was doing was I was checking how the VTX was going to mount on the board as well, which brought me to the fact that I need to screw in the front and the back first, and not the right and left side, because that screw hole is also going to hold the VTX assembly on the frame. So we just go ahead and we put our little rubber anti-vibration type cushions in there, and those will slip down on those pegs that are on the board. Actually, they're on the frame, sorry. Be able to set it in place and just push them down, and they'll somewhat hold themselves. Then we're going to come back and we're going to take our silver screws that appear to have almost like there's a built-in washer on it. You just take those guys, and they're a little bit fun to finagle with, because the little mounts that we're screwing these into are very, very small, so it does take a little bit. You'll see me fumble around a little bit to, yep, pop, to get it to start. So it's just, you just start slowly and it will catch, and then you can get it going. So we'll just bang, putting the first 2 screws on the front and the back out, and that'll get us started. And hold it in place without worrying about the right and left as we continue to do some stuff, because we're going to have some soldering to do here, because in order to power the VTX we have to solder it to the board. Now again, without instructions, I wasn't completely clear, if we were using where the VTX part on the board would be, or a different place, but everything I could find on it looked like people were soldering to the second side of the pigtail. So the pigtail is soldered to the bottom, and we solder our positive and negative to the top of the same pads. So the screws are a little bit of a booger. You have to be careful, because sometimes the board itself will pop off that peg and you got to pop it back in. But let's go ahead and look at the VTX now that we know there's no place to plug it in directly on the board. So we're going to come and we're going to put it to where the pigtail is. Now the red wire comes to the front pad there next to that black chip, and the negative is to the, or ground is closest to the edge of the board. So what I do when I'm doing something like this, because in case I have to take it apart, what I do is make sure I have some slack. I could have cut this wire short enough to where it was just directly there, but as you can see here, what I do is just make a little loop for the length I want, so that when I go ahead and need to take this thing apart to look at anything, I'll just have that coil under my canopy. But as you can see right now, yeah, I have enough room to throw this out of my way to work on anything I want. So we'll snip it off there and get ready to tin it up to go in. So all you need, because again this is such a small board, all you need is just a bit of wire, enough to tack into your solder into that small pad. So I'm just taking my, and this wire is again thin enough that you can do it with your thumbnail if you have nails. If not, you just want to strip just the smallest amount off so that you can get that in the solder. So just a little tag lead. Hopefully at some point here, guys, I will be able to afford to get a better vlogging camera. Right now, in the beginning I tried to save money. There's the other one. Tried to save money with $50 cameras, and they just aren't going to cut it. But it's not easy to get a $700 camera. So, but we're going to get there. So, fire up our soldering iron. For these small boards, I personally use 350C. Just because I don't want to burn the board itself or do anything. Some people will go hotter for quicker touch, but I keep it at 350 so I don't damage any chips or anything like that on the board. So now we're going to go ahead and tin our wires. So we'll put this in fast motion because it's not the most exciting thing to see, but you know, as everyone does, you just apply some heat to your wire and to your solder and get a nice tinning up on there in advance. Nice little ball. Because I want to go quick when I solder, since I'm soldering it to where the pigtail is, because I don't want it to start melting and fall off the pigtail, that is. So you see why I don't like soldering much, because you can watch my shaky hands. But there we go, we're soldered on, everything's good to go. So now we can mount the VTX to the board and lock down those right and left screws and get that part complete as well. Okay, and with that done and all set, we can begin to screw our last two screws in to hold the VTX to the board and lock it down on the frame. That's only going to take a couple screws. It just takes a couple seconds. Again, these little knobs and putting these screws on them do take a little bit of effort. It does try to move around a bit, but you get used to it after a little while, and it all usually goes pretty well from there. Alright, now what I chose to do in this case, because I noted that it didn't come with the little rubber bands you usually get to hold the wires up against the motor mounts, what I did was I just took the wire and went through the front, there's some gaps, and wrapped it around there one time, keeping the wire sets to the right and left where they went, and that just gave me a bit of the nub left back out with the jack on it for me to plug in, and took all that extra slack out of it. So that was a route I went on this. Again, this is completely up to you and which way you want to do your wiring. That's again up to the beholder. This is just the way I chose to do it to keep them out of my way. Now, I started trying to use the tweezers, and it worked on several of them, and a few of them it didn't. But the tweezers were certainly handy with the method I was using of wrapping them around the front to spin that over and help pop that in for you into the board. Of course, these particular plugins do not have like a tab on them that goes into a slit, but of course the holes are closer to one side of the plug than the other. So you just look at your plug itself and the plug-in and make sure you're matching that up properly. Put the final one in here, and our motors are set. So next, let's look at the canopy. Now on the right and left sides, on the side of the mounts that we just screwed in, there's some knobs sticking out. And those knobs just go into that hole. Now I got 4 extra different kind of screws with the kit, and I maybe it's for screwing these in, but because the knobs stick out, I think the way I'm doing it is correctly. Again, we got no instructions, so who knows. So it just pops in the hole with the knobs on the side, and that's holding our mount on. Now, right here, you can see one thing I definitely forgot to do was I forgot to put that red antenna out of the hole in the front so that our antenna is out. Again, sometimes that's a personal preference thing. Some people leave them inside and say it works just fine. I usually pull it out the front and have it sticking up right next to the camera. Or you can take something and punch a little hole in the canopy and have it sticking straight out of there. So again, we're going to take a look at these props, and one way, I usually know with the props besides looking at another quad. So if the high side of the pitch of the prop is on the left, it goes on the left front, and if it is to the right, it goes on the right front. And then of course kitty corner is your matching props. So if we stick the right high one that's on the right, then on the back left is the same type of prop. Alright, so we'll stick all of our props on in fast forward because it's not very exciting to see this. Pretty easy concept. These are just a hole with no screws, so you put them on and push them down as straight as you possibly can, because remember that shaft is ultra tiny and easy to bend, and that is not something you want to do when putting it together. So be careful, but again, not very exciting stuff. So with 3 of the 4 props on, let's go ahead and weigh this last prop, seeing as how we don't have any extras, and see what our prop weight is. We're looking at 0.3 grams on the props, so let's get this last prop on and we'll scale up the whole thing. Okay, so all 4 props are on. Let's get a total weight on this little whoop and see what we have. And we're going to use this total weight to compare it to our NewBeeDrone when we build it out. So we're 21.3. That's our total weight with everything on board that came with this. Okay, for our final step, we're going to go ahead and plug it into a USB, put it on the computer, and set up Betaflight. I do know that this board comes about as blank as it gets, from what they say. We're going to bind it up to our radio, and then again put it on Betaflight and set up everything that needs to be set up on it. Like I said, I heard that there's not much going on here, so I put the PIDs on it that we're using on the NewBeeDrone so that we're kind of matching apples to apples as far as that goes when we check out the flight characteristics, and we will be ready to go. So look forward to video number 2 where we do the NewBeeDrone, and the 3rd video where we compare them both. Thank you for coming. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Thanks, guys.